Welcome to the Lights Camera Pro podcast, where we interview entertainment pros about their careers and how they became successful in the industry. The secrets to their success here every week. Here's your host, Shawn Ventura.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Lights Camera Pro podcast. I'm your host, Shawn Ventura, and I just want to say subscribe on Apple, Google, Spotify, wherever you are. Leave a good review. Tell your friends, share on social media. Keep this thing going. Okay, thanks. So today our guest is Mark Auleta. He's one of my greatest friends in the whole world. I've known him since college. We had a theater together. We made short films. We lived in San Francisco, New York, Boston. He is a colorist and motion graphics designer at Showtime, and he works on shows like Homeland and Kidding. He's going to tell us all about it. Here we go. So let's start. So you and I have known each other for many years. We met in college. We were roommates at how many different places? Like 3 or 4?
All around downtown Boston, I'd say. All around Emerson College.
Yeah?
Yeah, we always ended up in the same spot.
and then we had a little place in San Francisco where we had a theater, and it's crazy times, man. Really creative times there.
Short films and life drawing classes and poetry readings and
arena interplay and motorcycles and all kinds of stuff. So it's good to talk to you, man. Like, I saw you in New York 3 years ago, but you know, we have lives and families, and this is a good thing. So let's just
now we're talking to everybody like this. You know, it's like even people that live down the street, we're still telecommuting, teletalking.
Yeah, I'm doing some stuff on Sunday with my cousins who I haven't seen. I saw about half of them 3 or 4 years ago in Boston. I brought my kids, and my kids met some of my cousins and my aunt and uncles. But we're doing like 20 cousins on Zoom on Sunday night at 7. So that should be fun.
Yeah, that should be fun. Good thing they only last 40 minutes.
Yeah, that's true. They max out at 40, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's get started. So when did you know, I know you grew up in Florida, but when did you know that you were going to do the job that you do now? Like, are you a creative director now?
I'm not technically a creative director. I was freelance for 20 years doing motion graphics, motion graphic design, motion design, compositing, all that kind of stuff. And I was just doing job to job. So it's only recently that I took on a staff position with Showtime. And now I'm kind of just starting my career as an employee, because for the last 20 years, I just had my own company.
Right. But you're still doing After Effects, or have you moved on to other stuff?
I've moved on to other stuff. I mean, motion graphics and animation was always my kind of thing that I just did naturally. And then I started moving into 3D. But lately, and by lately, I mean the last few years, I've been focusing on color grading. Okay. And I would say I'm pretty much that's like where I want to take my career over the next 10 or 15 years.
Okay.
Ride it out doing color grading.
Yeah. Are you doing Da Vinci or something else?
Yeah, Da Vinci. Okay. And I got some accreditation, and luckily my job gives me a lot of room to breathe, and kind of got me through the awkward period of dumping in too much color and getting my blues and reds mixed up. But, I kind of worked through all that stuff because I'm kind of passionate about it now. Right. And I consider myself a colorist now, even though that's not my title. That's kind of what I think of myself as.
So let's go back. Let's go back to the beginning and just say, like, okay, was it high school? Was it college? Was there some point where you're like, I want to do effects, I want to do motion graphics? Where did that come from? Right. Or did you start off? It was
way before that. I mean, like, as a kid, in about the age of my daughter is now, we were making animations, we were doing collages, we were making Super 8 films, we were parodying television sketches, and not only like skits, but we'd also like film them and edit them. And I, on some level, I'm still doing that. It's like, I didn't think like, oh, this is gonna be my job when I grow up, but it was my job at that time, because you get so into it. And that's that same thing that is like, we're going to start this project and we're going to write the script and we're going to get the costumes and we're going to get the film and we're going to process the film and edit it. It's the same spirit that I bring to jobs now.
Right.
It's like that I had when I was 12, 13, 14 years old. Then through high school, same thing. Through college, same thing. We got out of college, it was projects and, like, let's paint this wall blue and we can make this a blue screen and, we'll get these props. And, and even then I didn't think of it as my job. I thought it was more of my art until I did get a job in post-production around that time in San Francisco at a place called Veritel Video. And
right.
That's where I cut my teeth on learning how to do all this stuff.
Okay.
Even before that, though, I think in Boston I had a job at the Monitor channel, which was the TV channel for the Christian Science Monitor. I was doing marketing there, but I was still aware of what was going on in the motion graphics area.
Right.
Like I would have gravitated toward that had I stayed there.
Okay, let me stop you for a second. I just want to go back to this story and see if you want to talk about it a little bit at all or not.
Yeah, okay.
So I remember being at our theater, Reno Interplay, and you had made some short films, but you made this video for the band The Pixies called Pong. And you sent it to Frank Black. And I remember the excitement when Frank Black left a message on your voicemail and you played it back for me and you were so excited. Can you talk about that a little bit or?
Yeah, I remember, I made this thing. It was just a fan video, because I was huge Pixies fan coming out of Boston. And I was playing around with a lot of really expensive equipment at work all night long. Because I had this job where I could just go in at 10 o'clock at night and leave at 6 in the morning and basically do whatever I want. So I was learning all the compositing tools and all the, so I was always looking for something to do. And I just made kind of this fan video for Frank Black. And I sent it to him. And I think he really liked it because he called me up on the phone and left a message on the machine. I remember coming home that day and hey, there's a message for you on the machine. And they're like, why didn't I keep? And I listened to it one time and I think I deleted it. Why didn't I keep that? Because it just came up recently.
Oh, really?
We were listening to Frank Black. I was like, he called me up once. But that's about, I tried to make another video with him, but I think he probably just saw me as some crazy kid. So
right, but you did just to go a little bit further. He did say that he loved it and he had already made a video, so it wasn't like he was like, whatever. He actually loved what you did, so that was really cool. That someone that we both loved said that, so that was cool. All right, so
plus I was using lots of materials that were unlicensed. You know what I mean? I was just grabbing stuff and photographing it and sticking it in there.
Yeah. It was very cool though. Okay, so so after college, where do you go from there?
After college, let's see. I went to college in Emerson in Boston. I went to LA for my last semester of college and thought I was just going to segue right into filmmaking. I'd written screenplays and, I was going to be a big director, a huge director. Mm-hmm. And I think about 8 months later, I was like, I can't take it. This place is not for me. And went back to Boston and started just looking for work as an out of college kid. And like I said earlier, I landed at this place called the Monitor channel. I was really lucky to get this job. They were a startup news channel for the Christian Science Monitor. So I was working with all these Christian scientists, which I'm not, and in the marketing department, which was, different. It wasn't creative at all. It was more just surplus kind of stuff. But still, it was around media, and I started to get a taste for post-production. But still did not know that that's where I would end up. Although in college, I was doing a lot of editing and really passionate about, editing 60 millimeter film and stuff. So post really was in my blood at that time. And then it was time to leave Boston, kind of done with that. And went out to San Francisco and hung out with you and made a lot of art. And also got my first job at a post-production facility and learned all the real stuff, time code and tape swapping and, how to, calibrate monitors and how to do real compositing.
And was that the first time you messed around with After Effects, or was it something else?
Yeah. Well, first it was Avid. That was my first thing that I fell in love with. I was like, this is amazing. It had just come out. Everybody was still doing linear editing at that point. And I would just jump on that thing at like midnight when the other editors left and just play around with it. And then the other thing was called Quantel Harry, which was the first kind of compositor, high-end graphics. Like, ad agencies would spend, $1,000 an hour to sit in this room and, like make special effects for commercials.
Right.
And I got to watch like the best guy in San Francisco work through the monitor in the back room. And I just like, oh, okay, I get that. All right. I see how you do that. And then I was doing it. And then I was starting to do kind of like night jobs for them on the Harry. And then After Effects showed up, and they were like, oh, there's a Harry on the Mac, and it was After Effects, and I learned how to do that. And then I guess it was about a year or two later, my wife at the time and I moved out to New York, and I knew how to do After Effects. And that was in 1995, and it's just been like easy since then. I don't know. I guess I was in the right place at the right time and had the right kind of like, look in my eye. Like I knew how to do this stuff.
Right.
But by the time we moved to New York and I had these skills, Photoshop, After Effects, it was just kind of like, which jobs do I take?
Right. And I have to mention that you kind of helped me. I mean, you definitely helped me out with my career. You got me into Click 3X, one of the places where you're working, to answer the phones. And
I didn't remember that you went to Click.
Yeah, I went to Click and I answered the phones for a day, and I was so horrible. They sent me over to Full Blue to edit, and I had edited it at Veritel. I edited the short film Violence. Then you let me in there at night. I got you in there at night, right? Yeah, so I'd seen an Avid, but this was InSync, Speed Razor. We eventually got Avid Express, but Peter Corbett and all that, and we were doing reels and demos, and I had no idea how to use it. And I literally went in and used the manual the first day and just kind of figured it out, and then worked there for a year. But you were the reason why I got in there, and you were super successful right away, man. I remember you, freelancing, permalancing at Click and doing really well.
We had an in. My wife was Australian, and she met Peter in San Francisco, and he's like, you got to come out to New York. I'm going to set you up. And she became a producer like immediately, and I became like the Mac guy immediately. Right. And having that, on your sort of resume immediately meant something. It meant I could go into almost any, because they were like this hot shop in town at the time.
Yeah.
Like I could go into any company and be like, hey, I'm over at Click. And they'd be like, hey, take a seat. So, and then not long after that, I kind of did my first job at Showtime. And that was such a natural feeling niche for me. Like I like the product a lot, and I love the people there. And I love the kind of freedom they gave me to just kind of not only do what they needed, but also kind of like put my own weird stuff on it too. And people were liking it. I was like, this is great. Like, I don't have to make like weird art films anymore. I can just make these kind of weird promos for the movie channel.
Right.
And I did that for a long time.
And they were very cool. I saw a bunch of them. Do you remember, or can you talk about working on the MTV Movie Awards? Because I know you had to like rotoscope a bunch of stuff. Yeah. Was that for Showtime, or was that a separate gig?
No, that was at Click. So MTV was their customer because they were the hot shop, and they didn't have money to sit in a flame, for 3 weeks and figure stuff out. They had money to sit in the Mac room for 3 weeks and figure stuff out. Right. So me and Sam DeWitt and Moreno DeMarco. This was so long ago, but I still know these people. I was just talking with Moreno the other day, and we all made that year's MTV Movie Awards package, which at the time was kind of like a big deal because they were always sort of like the weirdest, coolest.
Yeah. Every year the coolest TV. Stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. And we were like, this is great. We can really like spread our wings and do some goofy. There's a lot of rotoscoping, and that's pretty much where I learned how to do that. And the results were great. I had that stuff on my reel for a long time.
Yeah.
I don't even know where it is now.
So I just remember, like, just give a picture to the listeners. Like, I remember that one scene, it was like best movie, and it was like Rocky and Jaws and Godfather and all these other movies, and they're all rotoscoped out with a beach background or something. And it
Right,
was
they're all
very,
fighting.
very
They're all
complex.
fighting.
They're all fighting. Yeah, everybody was
on the
fighting.
beach. Yeah, yeah.
It was cool. It was cool.
Yeah.
So where are you going on to do your business from there, or are you doing other stuff?
I think I went to Australia because my first wife and I decided we were going to leave New York.
Right.
And so around that time, the end of the 90s, we took off to Sydney. And I worked in Sydney for a year. And that was amazing because I was meeting, we were doing like pitch meetings with big networks about TV shows we wanted to launch. And it was, I had the American accent, I had the New York smarts. And it was just sort of like I could just all of a sudden be at like in a major meeting, at a major network and pitching like an idea we wanted to do for a TV show. And having the guy actually like nod his head. I mean, we never got the green light, but it was fun. And I worked at other post houses too there, the Attic and some of the other places, doing like big network show opens. And I felt like, okay, this is, because when you're in New York, it's different than being at almost anywhere else. Like, it's harder to get those kind of like really primo New York, like MTV Movie Award type jobs. You really have to be at the right place at the right time. But there, it's sort of like they're looking for that kind of talent. So I did that for like a year. And when it was time to come back to New York, I felt like now I can really move around town. Like now I can just go to all the big shops and I can kind of, just walk right in, take my seat, and start working.
Can you talk about just Imaginary Forces a little bit?
Right. So when I got back from Sydney, Imaginary Forces was just opening their New York office. And I was like, this is great. I'm right on track for like moving myself up in New York. And after a little bit of time, I think they were staffing up and I probably wasn't ready for a staff position at that point. But after they were up and running, I did get in there as a freelancer and started working with some really talented people. The guy next to me was making the Marvel movie open.
Right.
They're like, hey, Marvel's making a movie and they need us to do the movie open. And I was watching those fluttering, frames go by. And I was like, oh, that's really cool.
It's very cool.
Most of what they were doing though was like, commercials where the LA office was doing all the big theatrical stuff at that time. Okay. But it was still the ad agencies in New York were all coming to Imaginary Forces to make their commercials. So I was doing like AOL and I mean I can't remember them all,
Right.
I can't remember about 80% of the stuff that I worked on. So every time you mention something, I'm like, oh yeah, I remember that.
But two things. So I remember you really liking Kyle Cooper's work, who is the head of Imaginary Forces, and they did Seven, and they did some of the coolest opening title sequences in movies ever. So maybe you could talk about him, and then also just talking about After Effects and how deep it is. Like there's with scripting and motion tracking, there's just so much stuff in After Effects. It's such a deep program. Right.
So like when you first start using it, you start using it for the thing that you want to do. Like for me, it was like learning how to like remove a blue screen and comp it on top of some weird background. But then, as the software develops, you have to be passionate about it and stay involved. And almost every job I'd go to would be like incorporating 3D stuff or like introducing layers or, creating a 2.5D, scene with a camera, doing that kid stays in the picture effect, or you're always seeing what people are doing with it and learning that, and then it just becomes part of your your library of stuff that you know how to do with it. I would say I'm not really into scripting, but there isn't too much with After Effects that I couldn't do, if asked. And that kind of leads you to 3D, and then you're all of a sudden you're like, you know what, this is kind of limiting. I'm going to come back to After Effects to do my polishing and my compositing, but what I really want to do is take a camera into a 3D space and like start working in there as well.
And were you working in Maya or were you working in the 3D?
Cinema
4D. Yeah, that's what I meant.
That's broadcast design pretty much relies on cinema, where Maya is more for like character animation, which I don't do at all. I mean, for me, it's more like motion graphics, but in a 3D world really opens up It's kind of like a tired look now. Like everything now is just like, just make it blink from black to white, and that's plenty. But in the 2000s was like an explosion of ideas and art and in motion graphics that a lot of people think of as sort of the golden age of motion graphics. Because everyone was learning how to do it, artists were coming to the scene, and everyone was making this amazingly complex and over busy stuff. But I don't think it was selling products. I mean, now it's more like just make the background red, and now it's sort of like, it's so simple. And that's why I'm really moving towards color grading, because I find the nuance in color grading to be so satisfying. Like the semiotics of, how you can just change a scene by taking color out of the sky, or, like cooling it off instead of warming it up. And,
change the mood, change the style. Yeah.
I love it. I love it. And so many people think of it as just like, well, you're just fixing it, because we get a lot of dailies in. So we get all these dailies in from the set, and we have to make a promo out of it. I work at Showtime now.
Right.
And so whatever the show is, like Homeland or whatever, we get in this log footage that looks like milk, and we have to make it look like Homeland, which it does have its own look. And after I've studied the show for many years, I get to know, how to get it to look like the way they want it. And I did Kidding too, the Jim Carrey show, and the DP was like, wow, great job with the color, and that meant so much, because I get what you're doing with it, and I could make those adjustments, and we could make a promo right from your set,
Yeah. Does Kidding, I didn't watch the show, but I did read something about the color grading actually, and how the show's very yellow. Is that true? It's got a yellow grade to it, like to enhance the show somehow.
Yeah, I mean, when we first started getting the dailies in, and we saw the set, because it takes place on a kid's show, and we're like, wow, this stuff is obviously like super colorful, and this is what they're going for. It's Gondry, who did who directed it, made it. So we're like, okay, he's doing some really colorful stuff. So all our promos were like super colorful. They didn't really stop us. And then the show came out, and it was like super flat. I didn't notice that it was particularly yellow. I just noticed that they went for a real cinematic, like flatness almost.
Okay.
Like they took a lot of color out.
Okay.
I don't know, because I guess the show has like dark undertones, so you have to, you can't be like. But with an artist, if you're working for, I've had to do this. There's a lot of like big showrunners now who are actually like famous people, but they make TV shows. Like Ben Stiller made Dannemora, and we had David Lynch on Showtime, who was doing Twin Peaks, and we're actually working not directly, but for them. Like they're looking at this stuff, telling me what to do differently.
So let me ask you, I've actually been at Turn. I've seen a lot of color grading and a lot of stuff for NBA basketball and TCM, but is there someone who you admire? Is it Kyle Cooper or someone like that you're just like, everything that this person touches is gold, and it's just amazing as far as motion graphics or color grading or whatever? Is there someone you really like?
It's corny, but I'm like that with Wes Anderson. Like I will go see the new Wes Anderson movie, like the day it comes. Well, not anymore, but the day it comes out. I love what he does with color. I love how he tells his story. He doesn't do a lot of effects or animation, but the way he like composites, like the way he like does his mise en scène, like the way that he puts a scene together is the way an artist approaches what you're going to look at. And I love that about him more than any other director.
I love him too. And I particularly love, I kind of like, I think after the Express movie where they're in India, I forget the name of it. After that, I started losing him a little bit, but I really got into his animated movies. They're so cool.
They're beautiful.
They're really beautiful. And I just love it. I mean, his stuff is very dialogue heavy, but Rushmore is one of my favorite movies. I absolutely love him. He's so cool.
Well, I remember when the Grand Budapest Hotel came out, and that was after his animated, the Fox movie. Somebody's like, somebody asked me like, What'd you think of it? And I was like, should I go see it? And I was like, yeah, you have to go see it. It's, it's amazing. They're like, oh, so it's not super Wes Anderson-y? And I was like, no, it's super Wes Anderson. Like it's the most Wes Anderson movie ever.
Right.
And that's what's so great about it. I always feel like I'm in such capable hands when I start one of his films, like, or that he and the Coen brothers too. I just feel like no matter, even if it's one of their bad ones, like I'm still going to be like, I'm not going to be thinking about editing. I'm not going to be thinking about special effects. I'm not going to be thinking about like, is this a good performance from the actor? It's just straight up like, I'm all in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember you saying something once during our long time together, 10 years together of hanging out. We went to see a movie, or maybe we watched it on TV, and you're like, oh crap, that's 2 hours of my life I'll never get back. And you're like really upset about it. And I was like, Mark, it's just a movie. You're like, yeah, man, but I just wasted 2 hours of my life. Do you remember that, or you still feel that way?
I don't remember that. And I mean, that's certainly something that people would say now, and it would sound kind of cliche. And probably when I said it at the time, like, I don't know, maybe I had recently heard something like that, but I don't know. But it kind of doesn't surprise me that much, because I do have a really high standard. I tried to be a filmmaker. I tried to make short films. And the thing that kept bothering me is that it wasn't good enough. Like I in my mind, I kept pushing. I want more. I want it to be better. I want people to love it, like the way I love a Wes Anderson movie.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what kind of made me go away from all of that stuff. I kept coming down shorter and shorter and shorter, coming down to like a commercial, which is 30 seconds. Just like, this is actually something I can contain, like in 30 seconds, I feel like I can do something good. Like, 2 hours is like, it's too hard,
Yeah.
And that's why I admire like really good feature filmmakers who can just grab you and right from your chair and, keep you there for 2 hours. And it's funny that you bring that up, because I do feel that way often when people dial it in, or it's not that good, or production didn't go so well, or whatever. It's very hard to put lightning in a bottle,
It is. It's hard for everything to come together with the actors, the directors, the editors, the composers. I mean, it's just really hard to put a movie together. It's a crapshoot. But so we're going to go to advice in a minute at the end, but just a question about like, what is your advice for people? I know, like, I've had a couple of people on here who have talked about the 10,000 hour rule, or, like, what is your advice for a career in motion graphics or color grading, or let's just say effects? Is it just like, it's a really hard career? It's a really fun career? What would you say to someone who's coming out of school, or someone who's like editing and they want to move into color grading? Like, what would be your advice to them if they were like an intern?
I think first check yourself and see, like, are you a weirdo about it? Like, do you feel like you could put yourself in a room for 2 days with some grilled cheese sandwiches and like only do that?
Yeah.
Until you've learned it and figured it out and know the nuance of it. And if the answer is yes, then do that. Like, do some projects and, pretend you've been assigned to do this as a job, because it's one thing to do your own stuff, but then you can show up at a job. And this is why I like working at Showtime, is because I kind of know what's going to happen. But before I was working there, I'd show up at a big place and I have no idea what they're going to ask me to do, or if I know how to do it. And this is even before you could go on Google and just watch tutorials. Like, you kind of had to know what you were doing, or else it would be really clear, like, immediately that you did not know how to do that. So you really have to kind of be a weirdo about knowing how to do all this stuff and wanting to. Seeing something on TV or in film or on the web and just being like, I want to know how to do that. I want to do how to do this motion tracking. I love the way that they've incorporated the type into the scene, and the way the shadows fall on it, and the way that type causes reflections on the ground. It's like, what if you showed up for a job and they asked you to do that? And you're like, oh, I don't know how to do that. Like, you can't. Like, you have to be able to know how to do that.
Yeah.
So,
and I think a lot of people, like, I was just talking to a 3D animator, Pat Rossano, who worked on Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs 2 and some other movies. And he said, not every day, but a bunch of days, they would be like, hey, can you do this? And he would think to himself, I have no idea how to do that. And he would have to kind of figure it out at work, and just ask other animators, hey man, can you help me out? I got to make some hair. I got to make some water.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And luckily it is a social business. And even though it seems like you're just sitting in front of your computer with your headphones on, like I'm communicating with 3 or 4 artists right now about making like subtle changes on this Good Lord bird packaging. So it's like, we're all really in it, and we know what we want to do, and we know how to get there. So I would say like, you don't go into the business just because it sounds cool, or you think like it would be a good thing to, because it is taxing. And I almost burned out just jumping from shop to shop for 8 years, like just doing whatever job, bigger and better than the last one. Like it can be like really, really difficult.
Yeah.
But if you're a nerd about it and you're really like, it's the only thing that you really love, that's basically for any career. It doesn't matter what it is. Like, just figure out what you like to do and do that. And then see where people are making money doing that, and then kind of do it that way.
Yeah, it's almost like you have to be obsessed with it to be good at it.
Whatever it is,
and love
whatever it is. Yeah.
So any last? We'll wrap it up after this, but any last story you want to tell, or any last thing you want to say about color grading or about your career in general?
Let's see. We've already covered a lot of stuff. I remember telling someone, maybe like 5 years ago, like noticing all the color grading work that we were doing. I was like, look, if you figure out how to do Resolve and figure out how to color grade, you'll always be needed. But I didn't want to do that because I was really just getting into 3D at the time. Mm-hmm. And then I guess about 3 years ago, it was like, okay, I'm going to do that. I'm going to take my own advice and like learn this thing. And it's been great. Like, I'm really enjoying the interface and like dealing with the DPs and the creative directors and like just get it, and that's what I tell the people, the creative directors I'm working for. I was like, I'm making like 1,000 decisions like a day on this stuff.
Yeah.
You think I'm just like balancing, but I'm not. I'm like subtly changing things and like cleaning people's faces up and taking eye bags out and doing a lot of beauty work too. Mm-hmm. And it's just, and I'm making those decisions, like I'm the one being like, oh, I think I'm going to give this actress like a little bit of love here. She's going to look a little bit better. I'm going to brighten her eyes a little bit.
Right.
And it works, It's just it's the kind of unsung, unthanked area of this industry that I'm really enjoying right now.
That's very cool. And it does seem to be the hot thing right now. I know a bunch of people who were doing it on other Softimage and some other programs. And now mm-hmm. DaVinci, you have editors using it just to color correct their footage a little bit. But
they use Lumetri to try to get the stuff approved. But then I ended up, when I get the XML, I just strip off all the stuff that the editors put on. And I
Is that what you do? Okay.
Yeah, that's the way we do it at Showtime. But I'll have their stuff up there just in case they did get it right, or that's like, oh, that actually looks really much better than what I did. And then I'll just tweak mine to make it look more like what they did. But for the most part, when I pull in that EDL, like it's just taking off all the stuff the editors did just to get it approved.
Right. And it, well, this has been awesome. It's so good to talk to you again, man. Yeah. And hear your stories about your career and everything.
You brought back some fun memories. I'm sure we have a million more.
Oh God, man, I could talk to you forever. We should definitely talk once in a while.
Let's do that
on the phone. Definitely. But do you have anything like where people could see your color grading, or can you just talk about a show that you worked on that they could just look at? Or
well, most everything I do is promotions for Showtime. So anytime you're going to watch a Showtime show, you're probably going to see like a trailer or something like that for Black Monday or, whatever's on now. We're doing Halo soon. I'm pretty much involved in most of the shows that are being promoted at this point because they all need like color attention.
Right. Cool.
But yeah, it's just all promotional work. But you know what? For me, that's enough. Like I don't need to be Wes Anderson. I don't need to walk down the red carpet. Like it's fun just being needed for something so small, like a premium channel promotion. It's like, it's fun to be creative in that world too.
Right. Or you can go work at the American Pavilion and go see movies, go see
Right.
premiere Pulp Fiction. But also good to just talk to you, buddy.
Yeah, you too. Same. And I look forward to listening to all your different shows.
Awesome, man. Thanks so much. We'll talk soon.
All
We
right.
should text and call.
All right. See
All
you
right,
later,
buddy. Talk to you later. Bye.
Thanks for listening to the Lights Camera Pro podcast, where entertainment pros talk about how they made their dream into a career.
Thanks for listening, and subscribe to our Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram pages. Thanks to Bob Juergens for the Rockin' VO and Joseph McDade for the music. Next time, we have a great friend of mine, Jon Dilling, who is a promo and long-form editor for Cartoon Network. He's an awesome guy. He's got some great stories about Harvey Birdman and Cartoon Network, how it all works. That's next time. See you then.